Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'd like to officially call this Mayor and Council meeting on March 14th, 2022 to order. For the record, Councilmember Marcelo Zapata has an excused absence. At this moment in time, I would like to invite my friend Mickey Deaton to lead us in a moment of silence and an invocation. Mickey?
Shall we pray? Everyone stand. Gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. We just thank you for life itself. We thank you for all your blessings, your love, your mercy. We thank you for your grace and all that you are. Father, I just thank you for the city council, for the mayor that we have. Thank you for the wonderful city of Roswell, Georgia, and all the people that's in it. I pray, Father, you just guide the mayor, the city council, and the decisions they're making. That will be a blessing to the people here, that will glorify you, and all this done. Thank you, Father, for looking after us, taking care of us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. At this time, I'd like to call Marine veteran Mickey Deaton to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Y'all join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mickey, very much. Well, next is the mayor's report, and it's a reading of a proclamation for the esteemed veteran of Roswell Award to second-class quartermaster Edward George Bernard. At this time, I would like to call second-class quartermaster Edward George Bernard to join me at the podium. Hello, Mr. Bernard.
Yes.
Proclamation, Office of the Mayor, Edward George Bernard, esteemed veteran of Roswell. Whereas Edward George Bernard was born in Burlington, Vermont on July 3rd, 1922. Edward enlisted in the United States Navy Amphibian Branch on June 2nd, 1942 as Seaman Second Class. He received naval training in Rhode Island and attended quartermaster and signal schools in Rosnah, Scotland, and Little Creek, Virginia. Edward George Bernard was assigned as a quartermaster on an English landing craft tank rocket 373 ship. As quartermaster, his job was to maintain the maps, calculate targets for the 100 rockets, and steer the ship during times of battle. He was required to keep a daily log, except for D-Day, which he was ordered to leave blank. On June 6, 1944, as a quartermaster on the LCTR 373, he helped launch the largest amphibious invasion in history, the Normandy Invasion. First into battle on D-Day, the LCTRs launched their rockets at critical land targets to destroy enemy strongholds before the Allied soldiers stormed the beaches. And whereas following D-Day, Edward George Bernard's LCTR 373 ship was sent to the Mediterranean to support Allied troops that were liberating France and Italy. He returned to England and then to Delaware for more amphibious training. Once completed, his expertise was needed, and he was sent to Hawaii to join the fight in the Pacific. His new ship was on the way to Japan to join the land invasion when the war ended on May 8th, 1945. His ship was then ordered to circumnavigate and guard the Hawaiian Islands. Edward received his honorable discharge on February 26, 1946, with rank of second-class quartermaster and awarded the following medals: World War II Victory Medal, European African Middle East Medal, Asiatic Pacific Theater Medal, American Theater Medal, and Good Conduct Medal. And whereas upon returning to the United States, Edward George Bernard received his Bachelor of Arts from St. Michael's College in Vermont and achieved first chair of the Burlington Military Band. After graduation, he lived in Lima, Peru, and studied ethnology at the Universidad Nacional Mayor de San Marcos, where he received a second bachelor's degree in humanities. He was assigned to help salvage a school, the Colegio Santa Maria, and teach in the small village of Macuayo, where he later became their principal. Edward earned a doctorate degree and acquired a Master of Arts in Spanish from the University of Arizona before returning to live in Peru for an additional 8 years. Edward is fluent in English, Spanish, and French. And whereas we shall always remember that the strength of our community and nation is in our collective bond to a spirit of service, and that there is no higher calling than those who have served in the United States Armed Forces, and the city of Roswell is proud to commemorate this great service of yours. And now, therefore, I, Kurt Wilson, Mayor of the city of Roswell, do hereby name second-class quartermaster Edward George Bernard, an esteemed veteran of Roswell, on March 14th, 2022, and call upon all our citizens to recognize his outstanding service to his country and our community. Mr. Bernard is very young. He's going to be 100 in July. Would you like to say a few words? We'd love to hear from you.
This is certainly a wonderful pleasure for me to be with you today. And I never expected it. And I loved the people of Roswell very, very much. Thank you.
Council, join me down here. We're going to take a few pictures.
Thank you.
So that is a veteran of the Second World War that's still with us. What an amazing thing for us as a people to be able to celebrate, isn't it? To be able to celebrate this man who was part of the D-Day invasion. Well, it doesn't get any better than that. The next item on the mayor's report is we're going to be dealing with several nominations, appointments, and actually, I think 6, if I'm not mistaken. So my request is I will address every appointment, ask council about it, and when we get through, depending upon obviously the approval of these appointments by council, I'm going to ask each one of these fine Roswell residents to come up individually at the podium after we've approved all of them, and to take pictures individually with mayor and council, and then as a group with mayor and council. So we'll be, I'll call each person up, we'll go through the process. When we get done with all the nominations, then we'll call everybody up individually. So the next item on the mayor's report is an approval of Historic Preservation Commission appointment, Mary Nichols. Do I have a motion to approve Mary Nichols to the Historic Preservation Commission?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Mortland. Any comments from council on the appointment of Mary Nichols? Any comments from Ms. Nichols on her appointment? At this time, council, all those in favor, please raise your hands. The appointment of Mary Nichols passes unanimously, and Mary will get with you in a few minutes on a photo op. Thank you. The next appointment is for the Historical Preservation Commitment, is that of Philip Mansell. Do I have a motion to approve Philip Mansell to the Historic Preservation Commitment?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Vanstrom. Any comments from council on the appointment of Philip Mansell to the Historic Preservation Commission? No comments from council. Any comments from Mr. Mansell? No comments from Mr. Vansell. All those in favor, council, please raise your hands on the appointment of Philip Mansell. It is unanimous. Congratulations, Mr. Mansell. It passes unanimously. The next appointment is dealing with the approval of a planning commission appointment, Kitty Singleton. Do I have a motion to approve Kitty Singleton to the planning commission?
Motion to approve, Ms. Singleton.
A motion by Councilmember Mortland. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Palermo. Any comments from council reference Kitty Singleton's appointment to the Planning Commission? No comments from council. Any comments from Ms. Singleton? That being said, all those in favor of the approval of Kitty Singleton to the Planning Commission on council, please raise your hands. It passes unanimously. Congratulations, Kitty Singleton. The next is the appointment of Planning Commission applicant Jim Walsh. Do I have a motion to approve Jim Walsh to the Planning Commission?
Motion to approve.
Councilmember Hills, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Hall. Any comments from council on the appointment of Jim Walsh to the Planning Commission? Any comments from Mr. Walsh? With that being said, no comments from the council or Mr. Walsh. All those in favor, please raise your hands. It passes unanimously, and the appointment of Jim Walsh to the Planning Commission is approved. The next appointment is the approval of Roswell Recreation Commission Erica Davis appoint Erica Davis. Do I have a motion to approve Erica Davis to the Roswell Recreation Commission?
Motion to approve?
Councilmember Palermo, thank you. Do I have a seconded?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Morthland. Any comments from council? Thank you. Any comments from Ms. Davis? That being said, all those in favor in council of the appointment of Erica Davis to the Roswell Recreation Commission, please raise your hands. It is unanimous. The appointment is approved. It passes unanimously. The last appointment for this evening is the Construction Board of Adjustments and Appeals appointment for Joaquin Jatez. Do I have a motion to approve Joaquin Jatez to the Roswell Recreation Commission?
Motion to approve, Joaquin?
Councilmember Morthland, do I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Hills has seconded it. Any comments from council on the approval of a Construction Board of Adjustment and Appeals appointment, Joaquin Jatez? No comments from council. Any comments from Mr. Jatez? No comments from Mr. Jatez. On council, all in favor of the appointment of Joaquin Jatez to the Construction Board of Adjustment Appeals, please raise your hands. It is unanimous and it passes. Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to call each of these appointments up to the front, and we're going to individually take pictures with the mayor and council, and then as a group. Why not? So, Mary, would you come first? Thanks, Mary. Exactly. Smile and say hello and say, welcome Roswell to my new appointment. I can't wait to fulfill it. I'm going to do an unbelievable job.
Thank you.
How are you, sir? Doing great, sir. Congratulations. Come on up, join us. Thank you, Mr. Mansell. Congratulations. Next is Kitty Singleton, Planning Commission. Kitty. Jim Walsh.
Thank you.
Next is Roswell Recreation Commission appointment, Erica Davis.
Thank you.
Last appointment is Construction Board of Adjustment and Appeals appointment of Keith Chavez. Mr. Chavez. Join us.
Thank you.
Appointments. Jim, Mary, Erica, Philip. Sorry.
We get 2 rows?
Yeah, you guys get in front.
Put this on the website. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda, the last item on the mayor's report, which is the real reason why I know all of you are here tonight, is a discussion of a 100-day plan. And I'd like to show a short video about the plan. So at this time, Marlee Press, our city clerk, will you take the floor with the video? Good afternoon. I'm Kurt Wilson, your mayor of Roswell, Georgia. It's February 28th of 2022, and I want to report back to you on our 100-day plan. On January 24th, Mayor and City Council laid out the first 100-day plan that the Mayor and City Council of Roswell were going to execute. We were excited about bringing it to you a month ago on January 24th, and I want to follow up with you today on February 28th and let you know that this plan is moving along as it should, so that it will be executed by May 3rd of this year. Let me remind you of some of the 11 priorities that we put forth before you, our fellow residents, that we would get done by May 3rd. The first one is one that probably everyone's heard about. It's the Oxbow Action Plan. The Oxbow Action Plan will be fully developed and presented to you, our fellow residents, by May the 3rd. And in that plan, you'll see a fully developed plan with a timeline, what it's going to look like, what it's going to cost, and even more significantly, you're going to see that we are going to execute this plan by Christmas of 2023. In other words, Oxbow will be done by Christmas of next year. We're excited about presenting the plan to you. We're excited about presenting some of the past information in a very clear an easy way to understand what's transpired in the past and to let you know we've got a pathway for the future. The second part of our 11-point plan is we will approve the Roswell River Master Plan that's been on the books since 2015. This mayor and council, in adjunct with a master planner, will improve the plan for the long-term best interest of the city. But by May the 3rd, we will approve, Mayor and City Council, a Roswell River Master Plan to bring to you, our fellow citizens. The third part of our 11-part plan is we will hire an economic development director for the city of Roswell that has all economic activity aligned under that individual. And that will include synchronizing all of the economic activity in our P3s, boards and commissions, and all various other sectors of economic activity that transpires in our city. We think this is important for the long-term, not only strategy, but to bring in true alignment to host economic activity in a way that has not been done in the past. And we're excited about what that will do for the next 20 years of Roswell. The fourth part of our 11-part plan is we will hire a master planner that will help us plan the next 20 years and put basically the city into 4 economic pods that will be fully transparent to all of our residents, and it'll be fully transparent to the potential development community that's looking at the city of Roswell. The 5th part of our 100-day plan, to be executed by May the 3rd, is we will bring an outside vendor to execute a comprehensive, full financial review of our city, of all budgetary functions and department activities. In other words, a full review of our government, its cost, and its functions. The 6th item, we will fully review the basis of our government spending of being priority budgeting or zero-based budgeting. This will be determined by May 3rd of this year. The 7th item on our 100-day plan, we will approve the Master Parks Plan and submit this to you by May 3rd of this year. The 8th item, we will approve the Master Arts Plan and submit this to you by May 3rd, our fellow residents. The 9th item, we will implement the People's Calendar on all of the mayor and city council meetings. The 10th item, we will execute a best-in-class police pay plan for the city of Roswell Police by May the 3rd of this year. In other words, Roswell Police will be the best paid police force in the entire Northern Atlanta region. And lastly, something that is a brand new idea is we will execute and institute a transportation commission by May the 3rd. Why is that significant? It's a new ideal, but we believe it's important that the residents' perspective be brought into all transportation ideals, modalities, and projects that are submitted by RDOT and GDOT. And so the Transportation Commission will be the people's perspective, the residents' perspective on transportation projects. This will be done by May 3rd of this year. That's 11 things that we are putting in front of you that we're going to get done. What I have here in front of me is something that you'll see when you come to city council meetings, when you come into City Hall, if you go into the various departments. What you will see is this 11-point plan so that we are holding ourselves accountable, and we're holding ourselves accountable in a very public way, so that when this plan gets done in the first 100 days, by May the 3rd, all these boxes will be checked. Now, it's just the very beginning of the plans that this mayor and city council have for our city. But we wanted to come out of the gate aggressively with 11 big things that we said we would get done for you in the first 100 days. I can tell you, after 100 days, we will submit to you, again, new plans that we will say, these are the things that we're going to do going forward for our city, for our residents, and we can't wait to bring those to you. I appreciate your time today. I thank you for allowing me to speak to you, and I thank you for allowing me to serve you. My name's Kurt Wilson, and I'm the mayor of Roswell. Thank you. So, if you haven't noticed, these are at every department in the city of Roswell. And you can see it's here. It's meant to be front and center, the 100-day plan. Today is the halfway point. It is 50 days into the 100-day plan of delivering this to you, our fellow residents in Roswell. 11 things that we said we were going to do on January 24th, that we're accountable, transparent, that we are going to deliver and be very public about it by May the 3rd. Council, any comments about the halfway point on the 100-day plan? Councilmember Hills.
We're working hard. We're shooting for the goals.
Amen. Council, any other comments? Well, with that, feel free to email us, ask us any questions. Staff is doing an unbelievable job of putting this plan together and helping to make council and mayor look really good. So Randy, thank you to your team and all the hard work that's going into it. It's hard to explain how much teamwork is going on. The next item is department awards. And the next item specifically is a department award. I'd like to ask Mr. Michael Fisher, Assistant City Administrator at this time, who presented this award back on January 10th of 2022 at the Mayor and Council meeting, is now coming back to present the plaque that the city received. Mr. Fisher, thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming forward.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson and Mayor and Council for allowing us to come up here. I'm very honored to be presenting this award to you tonight in regards to the ARC Green Community Certification Program. And just as a little bit of a reminder, this journey started back in 2009, and that was when our first application went into the ARC to become a green community. We were awarded certification to begin with at the silver level, and it was a great start, and we were proud of that. We weren't quite satisfied yet, but we were proud of that start to move in at the silver level. In 2013, when the city had to recertify as a green community, we recertified after we worked hard to find ways to be sustainable and to be green, and we recertified at the gold level. In 2018, when the recertification came back up once again, we achieved the gold level in the city of Roswell as a green community. But between 2018 and now 2021, we took a little bit different approach. Rather than waiting until right before the recertification time to start working on our application, we developed a steering committee. We developed a team within Roswell Champions to work together throughout the entire 3-year process for recertification to stay abreast of what we were doing in each department and throughout the city. That team was led by Allie Daniels from administration. I wanted Allie up here during this presentation. Allie worked very closely with the ARC throughout the 3 years, with the Georgia Commutes group, with each department, and she did that to keep our green efforts at the front of our minds as we went through those 3 years. She's got a tremendous knowledge and has really kept the details regarding all of the different measures that we had looked at and really what we needed to be able to accomplish each one. The team was made up of Jackie Dybel, John Boland, Kayla Doshabatla from Community Development, Sherry Maytubby and Pamela Drake from Transportation, Jay Reisinger from Rec and Parks, and Nikki Belmonte from Environmental Public Works. Some of those I know are here tonight. I would ask if you all would to stand up if you're here. Thank you guys so much for what you've done. Each of these team measures members carry the recertification of our green community status throughout the last 3 years, and we're pleased to present you, we want to present you our newest certification. It's the ARC Platinum Award. Your city, the city of Roswell, is now certified at the highest level for the ARC Green Community Certification. That we're very proud of. I want to share a quote with you, if I can, from one of our team members. This is what one of our members said about this last 3-year process. I know that I benefited from how we all worked together and communicated across departmental boundaries to get information we needed and to better understand the context of the measures. As the process continued to unfold, we constantly benefited from this collective body of knowledge instead of everyone staying solely within the confines of their own measures. A true group effort. And that was just a quote from one of the team members looking back on what they've done over the last 3 years. So I'm pleased to have the platinum level certification from ARC as a green community for the city of Roswell, and I'm so proud to have seen Allie lead this group like she has, and I'm proud that this group came together for this citywide accomplishment. Congratulations to you, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your support in aligning this city as a Platinum ARC Green community. And congratulations to Allie as our champion and our City Green team. Thank you all so much. You did a good job.
Ally, did you want to say anything?
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
To have the accomplishment.
That's a great accomplishment. Thanks, well done. Thanks, Mr. Fisher. Thank you, Ally. Thank you,
Thank you.
team. Well done. Great job. Next is the consent agenda. There are only 3 items on the consent agenda. Are there any comments at this time or questions from council with respect to the consent agenda? Seeing that there are no comments or questions from council, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak in reference to the consent agenda items? Seeing that there are no comments from council or from the public on the consent agenda, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Council,
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
thank you, Councilmember Vanstrom. Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Hall seconds the motion.
Mayor, point of order.
Yes, sir.
Would it be,
Council-
before as I see staff leaving, would it be possible for a photo with the team that went into this great thing, or is it too late?
No, it's not too late. There is, we can stall the process of the middle of the consent agenda.
Mayor,
As a matter of fact.
With your permission, while we're regrouping them, can I say a few words about this?
Absolutely.
This great honor.
Yes.
So, so first of all, please do not leave so we can take a photo. But this is something that I see as really a great achievement and something the city of Roswell should be proud of. Because Mr. Fisher, great job. Where I remember when you presented gold is when I asked, that I want to get to platinum next time, and you were kind of hesitant, not sure if we could deliver. And really appreciate Allie and the whole team putting so much into that. And definitely a priority for the city. We have examples and situations where we're certainly trying to look to preserve more trees, more green space. Certainly examples where the city even tied to different requests from developers where we've required greater environmental sustainability and efficiency. And just the fact that so many different stakeholders and staff are working hard towards this and making progress to make it an even greener, more sustainable city, I think is admirable. And I would love that photo opportunity.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo, for catching me on that mess up. So right before we finish the consent agenda vote, let's bring everybody up, Michael, and let's get a vote with, let's get a picture with mayor and council. Randy, would you like to join us as well? Sure. Come on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for catching me on my screw up there. So I'm going to ask the consent agenda a question again. The consent agenda is up on the floor. I am going to ask, are there any comments or questions from the council on the consent agenda? Are there any questions or comments from the public on the 3 items of the consent agenda? Being that there are none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Councilmember Vanstrom. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Morthland. All those in favor of the consent agenda this night, please raise your hands. It passes unanimously. The consent agenda is unanimous. Thank you very much. Next is the regular agenda. And we'll first do with the Community Development Department. Councilmember Palermo, will you read the first item, please, sir?
Item number 13, approval of RC 202-15092, 9650 Dogwood Road, approval of the issuance of a Metropolitan River Protection Corridor certificate for the construction of a single-family home. Ms. Dybel?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The first item we have tonight is the Metropolitan River Protection Act certificate located at 9650 Dogwood Road. They're requesting approval for their construction of a single-family home. Here's the aerial map. As you can see, it's basically located right almost at the intersection there at Dogwood and Riverside Road. The zoning of the property is RS18, single-family residential. Their site plan, here it's zoomed in a little bit more. This is what was sent to the Atlanta Regional Commission for their approval. And the MERPA calculations, they are in Category E within the vulnerability category of the Chattahoochee Corridor. The ARC found this to be consistent with the Chattahoochee Corridor Plan, and the staff recommends approval for them to construct the single-family home. Do you have any questions for staff?
Does council have any questions or comments? Councilmember Vanstrom.
I just have a comment. I don't know if the public is aware of the process that we go to protect our rivers. I was amazed in reading, this is all the paperwork that's involved in this one house that's right along the river, and it's impressive. We've got the City of Roswell, Fulton County, Atlanta Region Commission, Chattahoochee River Coordination Plan. We've got the United States Department of the Interior and National Park Service, all involved in this one decision to put a home along our river corridor. I think that speaks volumes of how we try to protect our great asset here in Roswell.
Thank you, Councilmember Vanstrom. Any other comments or questions from the council? At this time, would there be no further comments or questions from the council? Will the applicant come forward, please? Thank you, Ms. Dybel. Good evening, sir. Please tell us who you are, where you're from.
My name is Dmitry Shetkovsky. I'm from Atlanta, originally from Ukraine.
Outstanding.
And I'm trying to get the permit to build a house for me and my wife to raise kids in the city of Roswell.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this item? Yes, please. Thank you.
Mayor and council, my name is Derek Banks. I'm a resident of Roswell. I live at 360 Vickery Circle, which is the parcel immediately adjacent to the right on the map of this project. And I just want to make sure that the environmental impact studies have been done to make sure that this one single family does not impact the other parcels around it. My comment.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that question. Ms. Dybel, can you respond to that?
The reason they go through the Atlanta Regional Commission is so all of that is taken care of, and the plans that they have to submit down there indicate the impervious and the clearing amounts that they're required to show for the building of the single-family home, and that's what the ARC approves. So once they get an approval from ARC, they come here for an approval from you, and then they're required to go through the land development permit stage and the building permit stage, and they'll have to submit all those documents again through the city for their permits.
Mr. Ricks, you want to follow up with a question, sir?
Yes, those are on our website for the meeting this evening, and we can also send them to you.
Thank you, Mr. Ricks. Thank you, Jackie. I'd like to bring it back to the council, unless there's any other discussion from the applicant. Any other comments you'd like to make, sir? Outstanding. I'd like to bring it back to the council for any other comments or questions or discussion. Councilmember Palermo.
So, Ms. Dybel or Ms. Bromberg, not sure who this question will be. So, related to the gentleman's question on just the environmental impact and making sure that's publicly available, as well as helping preserve, which goes through the whole MERPA process. Could you also address just the city rules regarding stormwater and the effect of a development there, just so a neighboring property understands the rules around that?
Absolutely. So during the land disturbance review process, not only do they have to comply with the erosion control elements of our code, which is specifically what ARC is going to be examining at this point. That's the plan that I actually stamped that they showed on the screen just a moment ago. But as well, all the other codes, including the stormwater ordinance, must be met during construction. So as a matter of fact, that's one of the things that we went through in the process already, is to make sure they have room and are accounting for that. They will not be developing a great portion of that site. As you can see from the site plan, Jackie, if you can go back to that one, they're probably only impacting maybe about 40% of the site with their disturbance, the way that they're proposing to do it, and that's so they can be in keeping with the numbers that ARC has established for the maximums they can do. And then, of course, we'll be looking at tree removal, erosion control, as I mentioned earlier, and then that total impervious area would be captured by that stormwater treatment. And I think that pretty much covers everything we'd be looking at, and then they go to the building permit phase after that. Hopefully that answers your questions.
It does, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Any follow-up questions, Councilmember Palermo? Council, any other further discussion? Any other further questions? Councilmember Palermo, do you have a motion?
Motion to approve item number 13.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Hall. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your hands. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Councilmember Palermo.
Item number 14, approval of RZ 2021-3974 and CU 202-13975. This is 10325 Turner Road and Old Alabama Connector. Rezone OP, which is office professional, to CIV, which is civic and institutional, and conditional use for major utility. This item was deferred from the December 13th, 2021 Mayor and Council meeting. Ms. Dybel?
Yes. So as stated, this is a rezoning for 10325 Turner Road and Old Alabama Connector. It's also conditional use for the applicant to request the rezoning from OP Office Park to Civic with a conditional use to allow for a major utility. The application was submitted on September 7th. They held a neighborhood meeting in October. They went to Planning Commission in November and went to Council in December, and it was deferred for another neighborhood meeting in February of this year, and also back to Planning Commission on February 15th of this year. Here's an aerial map view of the location of the property. The zoning of the property, that's currently OP Office Park in the blue. Future development map showing it as neighborhood residential. This is the proposed plan. It's 50,800 square feet. 50 parking spaces are provided. There's a 40-foot landscape buffer between the development and Turner Road. And the project includes 14,500 square feet of office space and 2 equipment areas of 18,100 square feet each. So it's 50,800 square foot building. This was the original plan that they had back in 2021. As you can see, in this plan, it was 68,391 square feet. So they have dropped around about 17,000 square feet. The future facility that's shown on this plan is not a part of the new proposed plan. So here's the plan that you'll be deciding on this evening. Just wanted to show the difference between the last year's plan and this year's plan. Tree replacement has been provided, that they're showing tree replacement for the facility. Interior, this was discussed at length at the Mayor and Council meeting in December related to pods 1 and 2, and there was a pod 3 in the former original building, but that is no longer a part of this structure. These are the sound maps, noise maps, and I will let the applicant answer the questions related to the noise and the sound when they're up here making their presentation, but they did provide noise and sound studies as part of their application. Some history of the property itself. It was rezoned in 1996 to office professional. It was rezoned again in 1998 when there was a change to the site plan. It was rezoned again in 2007, once again, a change to the site plan. And there are conditions for each three of these rezoning applications. I do have those here this evening, should you ask for any of those conditions to be read. The Planning Commission reviewed the new plan and approved it with two conditions to the site plan that was submitted to the staff on January 28th, 2022. Square footages are not guaranteed. If there is any reason that has to be reduced due to staff comments, the building size could be reduced or parking might be rearranged. Condition number 2 was to install the 40-foot neighborhood compatibility buffer shown on the plan related to the January 28th, 2022 tree plan and to be approved by the Design Review Board. Staff recommends approval with the same two conditions. Do you have any questions for staff?
Thank you, Jackie. Does council have any questions or comments? With no questions or comments at this time from the council, will the applicant please come forward? Please tell us who you are and nature of your business.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is David Kirk. I'm with the law firm Troutman Pepper Hamilton Sanders. We have a presentation coming up in just a moment. Some of you are new. This will be the first time you've seen this. Some of you obviously have seen most of this before, but there are significant changes that we've made based on your comments, based on comments we received from staff and input from the community. As Jackie said, we were here in December. We brought a whole host of folks from Verizon and the design team with us in December. They're back with us today, so we have the whole team here to answer any questions you might have as we go forward. Let me just very briefly give you some context, excuse me, about the growth in wireless service demand. I think this places the importance of this facility in context. By the middle of last year, close to 70% of adults in U.S. households had cut the cord and relied solely on wireless devices for their personal, their business, and their emergency communication needs. That number is much higher among young household members. Nationally, about 80% of your E911 calls are made from a wireless device. Data usage is growing at remarkable rates, 40% annually, with a 105-fold increase in data usage over a 10-year period from 2010 to 2020. This is a chart that's a little bit updated, I think, from the one I showed you last time because the information's been updated. You can see in 2010 there were 400 billion megabytes of data transmitted on wireless devices. We're now to 42.2 trillion megabytes of data, and that's in 2020. So that doesn't even account for what we've been doing over the last 2 years in terms of working at home and using our wireless devices. So the Verizon wireless system needs to support this level of usage and this incredible growth in usage, particularly as 5G becomes more widespread. I'm going to hand things over to Jay Dill, he can introduce himself and tell you his role in this project, but it is a critical one, and we'll let him take you through most of the rest of the presentation and be happy to answer questions after that.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, my name is Jay Dill with Verizon. I'm the Senior Manager of Construction and Engineering for the South. Taking you through the importance of this facility, the growth for 5G and next generation services is coming from both 5G applications and multi-edge computing, where we're going to take the cloud and move it closer to the user. In 3G, we saw the emergence of social media. In 4G, we saw the emergence of video as for our users. With 5G, we're still imagining what the possibilities could be. And from augmented reality to virtual reality to low latency applications that could open up new possibilities for us. The facility that's there in Alpharetta has been in operation for right at 20 years. It is a critical element in our infrastructure for not only the city of Roswell, the surrounding communities, but throughout the entire state of Georgia. We expanded as recently as 2018. We were accommodating some of our growth and the demand that was driven from 5G and from multi-edge compute. The proposed facility is the same use and function as the existing facility that's located inside of Alpharetta. The identical facility was originally approved under the office professional zoning classification in 2007, and then in 2014, the rezoning did change that to where we would have to come to you for this rezoning request. So some of the things to get into the details of what have we done since the last council meeting. Following the feedback provided by council and by the citizens of Roswell, we did change our generator testing window in Alpharetta from middle of the day, or to middle of the day instead of the morning. It will still remain 1 hour and 15 minutes once a week for those generators. We've added sound attenuation enclosure on the generators that were existing inside of Alpharetta that did not have that, and we have plans to make that a permanent feature of that building. That'll have an immediate reduction in the sound levels. We've modified the Alpharetta site lighting to reduce spillover, and we plan to add shielded light fixtures on the new facility, as well as retrofitting multiple fixtures to cut down on light spill to our neighbors. We've modified the site plan with the removal of pod 3 and focusing just on pods 1 and 2 in the office space. Held the community meeting to discuss these changes, returned to the planning, which recommended approval. Again, eliminated pod 3, modified the location of the entrance on Old Alabama Connector Road to reduce the area of disturbance. We are also going to utilize a retaining wall across the back of the property adjoining Old Turner Road so that we can leave the natural buffer that is in place. Previously, our plans were to clear cut that and replant, and now and regrade. Now we're going to add a retaining wall so that we will not have to cut any of that natural buffer. We're also going to keep roughly 50% of the site undisturbed. So I was shown by staff the original site plan showing the third pod, the new site plan without the third pod, the road moved over, and the retaining wall across the back of the property. Here's the site plan overhead view showing all of the trees as well as the tree plan where we'll be replanting in that spaces. Existing buffer in full foliage, and then some of the proposed elevations. On some of the environmental considerations, we are still preserving, as I previously mentioned, 50% of the site. We'll be using shielded light fixtures to try to prevent light spillover. We are designing the building to attempt to get LEED certification. LEED certification is a green initiative to try to improve the efficiency of the building, very similar to Energy Star, but more advanced. We are also incorporating the use of solar panels installed on the roof. Those will be below the parapet walls, so mostly out of view, but we are looking to cover as much of the roof as possible with solar panels. Now, those panels will not provide the full load of the building, but they will provide some peak shaving and some savings in electrical usage. The generators that were proposed for Roswell are identical to those that we are using in California. They do meet the San Diego project's air quality emission standards and cardboard standards. And again, we will be running those generators for a significantly short period of time. I think Georgia allows us right at 200 hours of runtime per year in non-emergency situations. Last year, we ran our generators just over 50. To address some of the noise considerations, the community was concerned about noise from generators. We've already done a sound enclosure. We plan to make that a permanent portion of the existing Alpharetta building. Again, testing the generators 1 hour once a week on a staggered basis. We will also test the generators inside of Roswell for 1 hour a week on a different day than what we test in Alpharetta. The same staff would have to support both tests. So we would want to focus them on one building one day, one building on another. The generators would only operate continuously if there were an emergency. And that emergency would be loss of utility power to that site for an extended period of time. The new generators are designed to operate at a reduced noise level and will be housed in acoustic enclosures. The enclosures will also be placed inside of a wall that has sound dampening louvers installed in it. We've already asked acoustic engineering firm Arpeggio to evaluate the modeling of noise. What we've shown is the noise maps are showing that the noise would be well below the city of Roswell's noise limits of 60 dBA during the night, 70 dBA during the daytime as measured at the property line. This is the location of the generators, and there are 3 dots there showing where some of our measurements were made. This is in reference to adding the enclosure to the existing generators. And you can see here that when adding that, we were able to reduce from 82.4 to 66.5 dBA at the northwest, from 68.6 to 58.9 at the southwest, and from 68.6 to 64 at the southeast. So some reduction there. Here are the noise maps. The key to take away from this is the blue kind of squiggly line just outside of the blue wall is showing the noise level at the daytime limit, and the red line is showing the noise level at the nighttime limit, with the property line outlined in black towards the left. Now that is only with pod 2 operating. If we add pod 1 in and operate both, you can see where those noise limits would be achieved. David?
Thank you, Jay. As I hope we've demonstrated, this proposed project is very critical to providing a reliable wireless service here in the city of Roswell and throughout the state of Georgia. It's essentially identical to a project that was approved back in 2007. We've made substantial modifications, as Jay talked about, in terms of reducing the footprints of the building, moving the entrance so we can save more trees, and eliminating that significant graded buffer, replacing that with a retaining wall that will, again, preserve trees. So we've modified that in response to your concerns and concerns that the community has expressed. Staff's thoroughly looked at this, both the first time we came before you and the second time tonight, and they've recommended approval with conditions that are completely acceptable to us. Same with the Planning Commission. They've reviewed this twice and recommended approval twice. So we're here this evening to respectfully request you approve not only the rezoning, but the conditional use permit that's before you. We're happy to answer any questions you might have at the appropriate time, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you very much for your thoughtful attention, and we look forward to continuing to serve.
May I ask a question, maybe to my lack of thoughtful attention? So it was approved in 2007 under a different zoning piece. What happened in 2007? Why wasn't this piece moved forward on 2007, 2008, 2009?
Yeah, it comes down to the demand for the services. We had the ability to continue to expand inside of the site in Alpharetta and to keep the expansion contiguous with the existing building. And so that work was completed in 2018. With the explosive growth we have seen in 5G services and the multi-edge compute, it's now pushed us to where we have to expand further again.
So you guys, Verizon came to Roswell in 2007 and said, hey, we think we might need to expand, got approval at that time. Did you get approval at that time in 2007? So you got approval underneath the others, the OP zoning code. Actually got approval for this in 2007.
Correct.
And then you made a business decision to not go forward because you could expand internally in the Alpharetta site. So I got clarity, is that right?
Yes.
Outstanding, thank you. All right, so applicant, any other comments before I ask for public comment? Councilmember Palermo, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. I actually have a number of questions. So I do appreciate the presentation and showing those updates.
Hey, Mike, just FYI, we can go this way, but I really was going to go to public first and then back to us. Do you want to go first?
If that'd be all right.
Okay, it's outside the protocol, but I'm cool with that.
All right, excellent. I appreciate
Okay.
your
Yes,
flexibility.
sir.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to make sure I understand something. If I'm looking at, I believe you had it as a slide, and it's also in here. It's where it's pod 1 and 2 working together, working at the same time, the noise map.
Yes, sir.
So if I just want to make sure I'm understanding what this is showing. Is this showing that so pod 1 and 2, which one's pod 1, which one's pod 2?
So
I can
pod
see on
1
the
is-
map. I mean what you're doing, yes.
Pod 1 is the northern pod, pod 2 is the southern pod adjacent to the office space.
So is it pod 1 and pod 2 are both this property we're discussing?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Both the
That is
Roswell
correct.
property?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, first of all, for that clarification. And what I just want to make sure I understand is, so if I'm reading this correctly, the red line around that brighter yellow block, that's showing that that's at 60, and therefore, if I'm reading this correctly, the loudest area at the property line is at 56. Am I reading that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure I understood that. So whether it's day or night, bottom line is if pod 1 and pod 2 are running together, day or night, it's going to be below the noise ordinance.
Yes.
Okay,
That's correct.
excellent.
And keep in mind, Councilmember, I know you know this, but just for the public's benefit, that's when they're both running that 1 hour, 1 day a week. Or obviously during an emergency situation.
Excellent. Yeah, because I'm actually even more focused on the emergency situation. I hope it never comes to that. But in an emergency situation, even if it's nighttime where we have a lower requirement on things have to be less loud, even still, it would be below that with pod 1 and 2 running at the same time.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. So that was one thing I really wanted to understand. Now, you talked about the generators a little, which I'll get into a little later. But first, from a noise a sound enclosure standpoint, is this the top of the line, or do you see in other locations? Is there anything additional that you do from a sound enclosure standpoint?
Yeah, this is actually more than what we typically do. Typically, the generator enclosure that comes with the purchase of the generator is sufficient. We're looking at some of the feedback that we've received from the citizens and trying to add other steps. The block wall with the sound attenuating louvers on the generators. We are also adding the same sound attenuating louvers on the front of the building where the HVAC and mechanical systems are.
Okay, thank you. And to take a step back for a second on explaining why I have so many questions. So the big thing that goes through my thought process is I definitely understand that this property is zoned OP, which means there's the opportunity for building an office park. And so the big question that I have to ask myself is, you're requesting to change that from OP into civic and for this use. So I have to really ensure that what you're proposing ends up being equal to or ideally better than an office park. And so there's a lot of considerations that go into place with that. So I think that answered for now the noise. Regarding the lights, so as I look back to the Planning Commission meeting on something that came up was lights. And I know in the past, we've given zoning requirements or zoning conditions that ensured the lights were facing down and by no means bleeding into a neighbor's property. Is that handled here?
It is. Yes, so the lights that are currently installed are facing down, down-facing LEDs. They are, Catherine, help me with light fixture type, cutoff fixtures, thank you, ma'am. They are a cutoff fixture. We are going to be retrofitting the existing light fixtures with additional deflectors to push more light directly to our property. As step one. All lighting that will be added to the back perimeter will have the same deflectors. We have currently disconnected the 3 lights that are in the corner of the Alpharetta property that are causing most of the spill to the neighbors, with plans to, once retrofitted and once this building is built, they will be tied into the same lighting on the perimeter. The lighting that's directly on the building will stay as a photocell. The lighting on the perimeter will be changed over to a time clock to come on at dusk and to shut off 11 p.m. So
Okay.
trying a multi-step approach to address some of the neighbors' concerns.
Exactly. So great to hear. I appreciate hearing that. And to warn you, and there's certainly a long list of questions and discussion, I'm sure from this mayor and council, but certainly something I've learned is anything said, it's important to me if there is a motion to approve, that anything discussed be a part of a condition and be a part of a zoning condition, because I've certainly seen firsthand where someone would be up here, they'd say, we're gonna do X, we're gonna build Y, and then without that being a zoning condition, it doesn't end up happening. Whether that individual changed their mind, or just for whatever reason, they sell the property, and then that next person doesn't have that same view or vision. So I do wanna warn you, anything that we're discussing is potential where I'd wanna discuss it being a zoning condition if you're telling us this stuff.
That's fine.
And so a question I have, which came up at the last council meeting, is regarding, I remember there was an earlier plan that showed chain link fences. Are there any chain link fences that would be visible from the property line? Okay,
No, sir.
Thank
Just
you.
so it's on,
That is ornamental iron, right?
yeah, we're going to do ornamental iron fencing.
excellent, thank you. And so definitely an interesting thing that I had heard from a resident that asked at the planning commission meeting, and then one of your representatives kind of responded back, dealt with air quality. And so from an air quality standpoint, what I heard you mention was that the generators, so actually what I learned in listening to that planning commission is you mentioned that you do a lot in your California locations to really, regarding air quality and protecting the neighbors, things like that. So these generators, would these be the identical to the San Diego, California project, meeting those standards?
That's correct.
That's
And-
correct.
Excellent. And they'd be brand new that you'd be putting in this
Brand new.
Roswell site?
Brand new.
Okay. Now tell me while we're on this screen, so you filed the paperwork with the Green Building Council for LEED certification. I'm very familiar with LEED certification. Help me understand exactly what you filed, and basically what's the contingency or the dependency you have on whether or not you get LEED certified there.
I think we're going to need to bring the architect up for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll ask Catherine McGall with Morrison Hirschfield to answer that.
Catherine McGaugh, Morrison, Hirschfield. Yeah, so we have filed the paperwork for the intent of we are going to be LEED certified. And we're working with the lead consultant. And our first pass at the scorecard was...
Ma'am, would you speak up? I'm so sorry to interrupt
There
you.
a microphone I need to be... Oh, okay. All right. The initial pass at the points we believe we can get was 46. We need 40 for certified. A lot of that comes from the energy modeling that we do. And, a data center, it's a tricky thing to get LEED with the data center because you're not necessarily going to power down things. But Verizon already, as part of their buildings, does some pretty impressive metering because they want to use energy efficiently. So, so we filed for the intent. We have our drawings at a stage where we are going back with the lead consultant to verify that we are indeed going to be able to make the points that we were targeting. Again, most of them are in energy efficiency and being above the baseline. We have subsurface detention, we have the solar, we have a white roof, there's the metering, there's the water utilization, we have the low-hanging fruit of the low-flow toilet fixtures or plumbing fixtures. So, but yes, we have filed intent, And we are, as we start construction, we'll begin to track the process and file the paperwork. And as you know, then it's not, until you're done and they review all your paperwork, and do they say, yes, okay, you're LEED certified.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarification. And then my last question is, for that area that it sounds like your intent is to leave undisturbed and to leave all the existing trees and green space, is there any intention to put a fence around that? Or is the intention that just a fence would go around your buildable, the area that you're building?
The intention is to only fence the area that we are building and leave the undisturbed area as natural as possible.
Thank you. Those are all my questions. And thank you, Mayor Wilson.
Councilmember Palermo, thank you for those questions. I believe Councilmember Hall has a clarifying question.
Yes, actually, two questions. Back to the chain link fence. So I walked the properties a few times. There is a chain link powder-coated fence, what it appears like. Is that?
Yeah, inside of the existing structure, inside of Alpharetta, there is a chain link fence onto the rear of that facility.
But you will not be repeating that same fence in Roswell?
We will not.
And what type of fence will you be doing on this
Ornamental
property?
iron.
Ornamental iron. Okay, thank you. And just back to the generator question, Verizon happened to do this exact facility in Bloomington, Minnesota 2 years ago, my old hometown. And I listened to those meetings, and the folks there, very similar situation, same concerns and questions. One of the things they discussed on the air quality were filters, particle catching filters. And my question is, I don't know what kind of generators you were using in the Bloomington, Minnesota property, if they were of the same quality as the San Diego, or if you could speak to that, or if you're familiar with any of that.
Oh, good, Catherine. That is not my site, that is my peer's site, so I'm glad Catherine is familiar with it.
That's one of mine.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, they did not go through with I know what you're talking about, and they called it like a catalytic converter filter or something like that. And there we had several meetings with the mayor and city council about the noise and then the filter. And they're not putting those on because then it was determined, and the woman who had suggested it originally from the commission kind of did some more research and determined it wasn't really a viable option. But again, the generators that Verizon does, they meet the EPA standards everywhere, and they meet all the regulations that are required in that locale. And basically, you pretty much get the same generator everywhere. Certain locations in California, we have to do above and beyond that sometimes, but it depends on the specific locale. But the generators in Bloomington are the same generators in Roswell.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Hills.
Thank you. Thank you very much for listening to our residents. I think we'll hear from some more this evening. But I just wanted to clarify as well, from a site visit, listening to the Planning Commission, can you tell me again, is it 2 tests per week for the generators?
That's correct. So the Alpharetta generators would be tested on one day. The generators that we plan to install in Roswell would be tested on a different day.
Okay, thank you. And I had made a request on behalf of the residents that you consider the Alpharetta building, which we have no jurisdiction over, but for the consideration of our residents, to put in the sound abatement louvers or something to replace what maybe isn't sound abatement around the HVAC on the Alpharetta building. Is that something that you all have taken into consideration? I feel like the overwhelming issue for our residents is the sound, and thank you for what you're doing with the generators. That's huge. That's not unnoticed, but the sound, the 24/7 hum or buzz seems to be the AC. Can you expound on that, please?
Yeah, so we can evaluate that further and see if the placement is what's going to help us, or if there needs to be additional sound attenuation louvers added to the existing HVACs on the Alpharetta property. to try to shield the neighbors from the 24/7 buzz that they create.
Thank you, Councilmember Hills. Councilmember Mortland.
Looking at the tree line proposal that you're putting in, the sound buffering trees, can you speak to that real quick about what type of trees are going in, what your plans are on that?
I'm not aware of any sound buffering trees.
The tree line that is going in the back, is that?
So the intent for that was a visual screen. One
Visual
of the
screen,
feedback
sorry.
that came from the neighbors was they used to not be able to see anything until we built the expansion in Alpharetta. And then they began to see the building that's behind their property. When we came out and looked at the site, one of the things we noticed is that the trees that are currently there, most of their foliage is higher up than the roof line of our building. So we've moved 3 trees. Did we determine what the type was? Yeah, it was some type of evergreen spruce tree. And the intent is that in times of the year where the foliage is light, there will be an evergreen line there, and that's inside of the 40-foot buffer. So we would do something similar behind Roswell and then continue to add to Alpharetta.
In terms of the residents on this tree line, what kind of protections do they have if one of the trees dies that you're putting in on this buffer?
Yeah, we would need to replace it.
Any idea how long that would take? Do you have, if a resident comes to the city and says, hey, one of these trees is dead, do we have something that we can agree on that would be a 30-day type evaluation to make sure the tree is dead, the tree does get replaced, anything along those lines?
I think it would depend on the time of year, because if it was in May when the tree was dead, if you planted a tree in June, it's not going to survive. So I think there would have to be, we could consult with the city arborist on, on the specifics of that. But they could let staff here know. I know that many of the adjoining residents already have our numbers from our community meeting. So however they wanted to communicate that, we would respond.
Thank you, Councilman Mortland. Councilmember Vanstrom.
Jackie, could you do me a favor? It shows as page 10, proposed site plan in context. Can you go back to that? Or is that's what's on now?
Yes, sir,
So
that's what's on.
okay, it's on everybody's? All right. I just had a question. Do you see any future, and just, it's a bit of a repeat perhaps, but any future land use to the left of the building where you're keeping all those trees?
No, we do not.
No future development that you have planned for that area?
And our understanding from previous meetings is if somebody after me decides they wanted to build on it, the zoning approval is conditional to this site plan, so we would have to come back before council and planning and zoning for any future use. But no, we have no plans for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Vanstrom. Any other comments or questions from council? Would the applicant have a seat for a second, please?
Thank you.
Are there any Roswell residents that would like to address the approval of this motion? And if so, please limit your comments to 5 minutes and state your name and your address in Roswell. This is for public comment. No, ma'am, I'm asking public comment on this particular motion. Sorry. Welcome. Just tell us who you are and where you live.
I'm Jan Viviani, and I live in Barrington Farms, and you'll pardon me, I'm not a very eloquent speaker.
You'll do fantastic.
But what I'd like to tell you is a little bit about myself. I've lived there since 1992. It's a wonderful neighborhood. It's very, very beautiful. And I'm very appreciative of some of the changes that they've made to this. But I would implore you to think about this. This community has been there for a very long time. There are established residents there that this is going to impact. And I would ask you to think about it this way. Would you want to live in any of those homes on that back edge and look out on this facility? My profession has been with IT. I can assure you, these data centers are noisy. It doesn't matter what you do, they're noisy. And what really concerns me is what happens when the power is out and those generators are running to service all of those things that they're trying to accomplish. It's big, it's really huge. And that's all I can ask, is consider it as if you had to live on the other side of it, because I think you might come to a different conclusion. I don't know, it's a residential area. I get that it was going to be an office park, but it's a residential area. And that's something that really has to be taken into consideration, because you've got potential there to destroy property value. I mean, what are these people supposed to do when they put their house up for sale and the prospective buyer goes into the backyard and there's this big honking data center back there? I mean, and that's going to affect everything. It's going to domino through the whole neighborhood. So that's all I can say. I just hope it will help to clarify what some of the residents are feeling about this. So thank you for your time. Do I leave this up here?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your courage to come up here and talk to us. And does council have any questions they'd like to ask our resident? No, you're good. Sometimes we just try to open up the dialogue a little bit. Are there any other Roswell residents that would like to come up and speak to the matter? Thank you, sir. Please tell us who you are when you get up here and where you live.
Justin Reynolds. I live at 445 Sheringham Court. My property is contiguous to this property that's proposed. So noise has been the chief concern since the very beginning of all this, and it's been heavily avoided by Verizon in prior meetings, mainly because the impact is going to be very significant. For example, much of the information has been piecemeal to us, which is actually the reason specifically why we're here for a second round of all these meetings. Another example is that the sound map for the HVAC systems, which are going to run 24/7 to cool the servers, has been withheld until I specifically brought that up in my last speech. The original Planning Commission did not have any of these sound maps. They didn't have any of the information they needed to be able to make that recommendation. So it is a bit disappointing that they made that recommendation. And we understand that Verizon has the authority to build an office park on this site. However, a data center is nothing like an office park, and I don't think that's been made clear yet. This is an industrial data center which will produce a great amount of noise from the diesel generators in that industrial HVAC equipment I mentioned. And if you take a look at their legend on the noise map, you'll see the noise compared to wind in the trees or a retail store or a normal conversation at 3 feet. And this is very disingenuous because the noise, pitch, and tone make a huge difference. Is the noise in a retail store similar to an HVAC system or a leaf blower or a lawnmower or a motorcycle at the same decibels? I mean, common sense tells us no. And the problem is that per their noise map, we can expect 50 decibels 24/7 if I'm reading it correctly, and that's similar to a leaf blower right outside your home. And so I want to ask the mayor and the city council respectfully, if this was proposed to be in your backyard, would you approve this? No one wants more noise. Noise has a cumulative effect, and this noise will be in addition to the traffic and all the other various noises that we hear. And that would not be the case with a typical office complex. And the residents here, they do not want any additional noise pollution from a data center that's going to erode our quality of life and property value. And not only is this data center going to cause noise pollution, but they also have a very poor value proposition for local communities. From the AJC, quoting Nathan Jensen, who's a professor, he says that, quote, data centers have very few positive impacts on the local economy. There are some construction jobs, but after that, there are very few employees. And yes, the world is going to need more data centers, but it makes absolutely no sense to have a data center right in the middle of a peaceful residential area. Most of these data centers, I've done a good amount of reading on this, and most of them are far outside cities or in an industrial area, such as near train tracks or on farmland, where the noise pollution doesn't cause an issue. And I've spent a good amount of time reading about data centers, and I've been very concerned based on what I've read. And I would highly suggest that all of you search for the words data center noise on Google and just get a better understanding of how invasive these data centers can be on local communities. So a couple of examples. Chandler, Arizona was one example. That was a pretty big story. They wanted to attract more data centers into their area, and shortly after a few of those were built, they're now taking action to prevent any more data centers from being built purely because of the noise pollution. The article says that the city officials were, quote, excited to welcome a new industry and thought data centers would align with the city's vision for creating a technology hub. However, because of the noise, it says that they are, quote, eyeing a proposal that will make it more difficult for new data centers to open in the city. The article says that, quote, city staffers and elected leaders say data centers aren't sustainable, don't generate quality jobs, and produce disturbing levels of noise to nearby residents. And there's dozens of stories like this online, and it's extremely important that the city understand precisely what's being proposed. Or consider there was a Wall Street Journal article about a Bitcoin data center in Adel, Georgia. It says that, quote, some compare it to a giant dentist drill, others to a fleet of helicopters in their backyard. And per the article, one resident in Adel, Georgia says that, quote, the noise is like 1,000 hair dryers blowing in unison. Verizon, in my opinion, they did poor planning with purchasing this property, and someone has to pay the price for that poor planning. The current property not only spans 2 cities, but it's also surrounded by residential neighborhoods. And I think that Verizon has alternatives. You know, they could sell this property. They can build a data center somewhere else. I just want you to consider this decision. It is going to be very impactful, and I just want to thank you for furthering the Roswell culture of do no harm. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, very much. Are there further comments from Roswell residents on the matter? Good evening, ma'am. How are you?
Hi, good, thanks.
Welcome. Please tell us who you are and where you live.
My name is Julie Burrows, and I live at 330 Sheringham Court. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Verizon representatives, and Roswell citizens. I have lived in Sheringham for 31 years. When the old Alabama Connector Road was built, the city of Roswell promised us that no curb cuts would be allowed on the Connector Road except for North Point Oaks. Access to the property that Verizon now owns was to be through Kensington Square off of Sheringham Court, and it was zoned residential R1. The homeowners on Sheringham Court were not notified about a rezoning to Office Park. I am here before you today because the said property is surrounded by residential neighborhoods on 3 sides. Willow Springs on its front, North Point Oaks on its south side, and Kensington Square, Barrington Oaks, or Barrington Farms on its back. Verizon is expanding its mobile switching facility, and there are several issues that must be addressed. Noise pollution. This facility will have equipment yards along the entire front and back of the building for industrial-sized HVAC systems, compressors, condensers that will emit noise 24/7, in addition to the noise from the Alpharetta facility. In addition, multiple industrial-sized generators will be exercised or tested for 1 hour a day, 2 days a week. The noise is compounded by the significant noise from the 13,000 plus cars that now travel the old Alabama Connector Road daily at speeds up to 65 miles an hour. There are security and safety issues with a mobile switching station, which could put the people in the surrounding neighborhood at danger. Air pollution. Rob Evans says particulates will emanate from the diesel generator stacks. Light pollution. The parking lot lights in the current facility are on 24/7. If there is a new facility, the parking lot lights must have motion sensors and deflectors to prevent light bleeding into the yards and windows of neighboring homes. The zoning issue. The Planning Commission says a switching station does not fit civic, commercial, industrial, or office park. Due to the surrounding neighborhoods, this property shouldn't be anything but R1, but it is. Sean Ritchie said it was a mistake made in 96 zoning office park in the middle of a residential area. It does not make any sense now or then. Ron Bevan said, per the 2040 Community Development Plan, office park, it would not be legal. The quality of life issue. Carlton Hopkins on the Planning Commission said the passing this request will affect the quality of life and property values of Roswell citizens. The impact on residents is very, very valid concern. Jason Gaines, Community Development Director, said, we have an obligation to enforce zoning for quality of life. Quality of life is for elected officials to protect. I believe Verizon made a poor choice in purchasing this land, as it was then and is now surrounded by neighborhoods built in the 1980s. Verizon is a $216 billion global corporation. The homeowners of Roswell need the mayor and city council to protect our property values, our health, and our quality of life. What would I like? I'd like to see this go back to residential as promised when the connector was built. But that is not likely to happen. I hope City Council will not approve this zoning request until Verizon puts in writing the protections for state-of-the-art noise abatement and light deflectors. I believe Verizon now plans or will decide to sell the undeveloped part of this property to the left of this current building, the one that they're proposing tonight. So the remaining trees that are supposedly going to stay now probably won't be there much longer if they decide to sell the property. I would love for Verizon to donate the remaining undeveloped property to the city of Roswell for green space to prevent further development on this property. Thank you.
Tell me your name again.
Julie Burrows.
Julie, that was really well done, by the way.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Any other Roswell residents that would like to address the matter? At this time, would the applicant like to come back forward to address any of the questions from Roswell residents?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Again, David Kirk on behalf of Verizon. Not sure where to begin because we've been working very hard since last year to address these concerns, and to hear people speak this evening, you'd think we've done nothing. We've made it very clear that the generators are not going to run 24/7, but Mr. Reynolds insists they're going to run 24/7. That's simply not true. The only time they would run 24/7 is if Mr. Reynolds and his neighbors and everyone in the area experienced a catastrophic power failure. We're very fortunate in this location, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, but I believe we have 2 Georgia Power feeds to this location. So if one goes out, we still have power on the other. So it would really have to be one incredible power loss for us to have to rely on those generators for any period longer than what we exercise them for, which is 1 hour, 1 day a week. What's interesting is there were no noise, this facility in Alpharetta has been there for 20 years. There were no noise complaints during that 20-year period. The only time people started complaining about the noise was when we submitted these applications. So keep that in mind as well. Ms. Burrows' statement about the no curb cuts on Old Alabama Road connector simply not reflected in the record. There has always been 1 curb cut allowed on this property as far back as I've seen the records of the rezonings. We can't do anything about the 13,000 cars on Old Alabama Road connector, except this new facility will have about 25 people employed. Most of the employees on this site will come from next door, and they will simply rotate back and forth between those. So if this were an office park, which would, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we could clear 80% of that entire parcel we could have 80% impervious surface on that entire parcel and a 3-story office building. I submit to you that that would increase the 13,000 vehicles a day on Old Alabama Road Connector much more than this facility likely would. The Planning Commission recommended approval twice. I don't know exactly where those statements came in the record that were quoted by Ms. Burrows, but the Planning Commission recommended approval of this facility twice, both before and after we made the major modifications. So I think that's just about it. Jay, did you have any? But we'd be happy to answer any more questions y'all might have.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. So I have a question and then I have some comments. So certainly, heard comments and things that I discussed with you earlier regarding light reflectors and really noise with the state-of-the-art noise reduction as well as the air quality aspects. But the aspect that I did not discuss with is the HVAC, the AC units running. So I guess, yeah, so help me understand better the noise impact there and the different aspects there, because obviously that is running the majority of the day. Obviously that's not facing the neighbors, that's facing more trees in the street, but just help me understand the risk and how it goes back behind your building.
Yeah, so I don't have any noise maps showing the impact of the HVAC running when the generator's off. The lines that you're seeing now are with the HVAC on and the generators on. So that shows the 56 decibels at the property line with everything running.
Let me, I just want to make sure I'm repeating that to make sure I fully understand. So this noise map that I referenced earlier that has 56 dBA at the property line, that is with not only the generators running, but also
that's with
the
everything
HVAC running.
in go mode. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay.
It's all 4 generators and all HVAC units running.
Okay.
There's some technical reasons why that will never happen, but well, one, we have redundancy in all of our HVAC units. So if I need 4 HVAC units, I'm going to put 5. That's so if one breaks, another one can come online. So the max that we would actually ever run of the HVAC units is 4 per pod. Same thing with the generators. We size the generators so that any one generator can cover the entire facility. We've done the sound maps with both generators running at full load, but that won't ever happen. If commercial power goes down, each generator will take half the load. The only time a generator would go to full load is if one of the generators breaks, goes offline, the second generator will automatically take the remaining load. So these, if anything, these are a little higher than what we'd actually expect to see in our daily usage or our weekly usage.
Excellent. Thank you for explaining that. And again, to clarify, I know we discussed earlier with the noise enclosures as well as the generators, as well as light reflectors. Those, it's my understanding and what we discussed for potential conditions, et cetera, that those are state-of-the-art, or am I misunderstanding? Is there a more state-of-the-art level that you're not thinking of including regarding the light reflectors or noise reduction walls or generators?
Yeah, my understanding is this is the state-of-the-art of what we can provide and is more than what is typically part of our standard designs.
So when you say for what you can provide, meaning just, does that mean what's available from a noise reduction standpoint and what's been done in any of your other locations?
This is more than we've done in most of our locations, and it is the state-of-the-art of what is available for noise reduction on the generators and the HVAC.
Okay. So thank you for sharing that. Now, can we go to the slide that actually just shows the bird's eye view with the plans?
10.
Right here, you just passed it.
10.
Right here, yep, thank you, yes, it was 10. So a question and a legitimate question I feel came up of just making sure that we're thinking about this. Really, if we live in one of these houses backing up to it, and I think that's a really important question, because I think some of the comments I heard were spot on, that is absolutely the responsibility to make sure that we're protecting well-being, the safety, the health, the welfare of the residents, and an important, crucial part of that is quality of life. So there's no question in that. And I think it was brought up too of some residents sharing they disagree that I think it was in the late 90s when this was rezoned to office park, and I agree with that sentiment. I would not have rezoned this to office park. And unfortunately, the situation that we're in is it is zoned office park. So what I'm looking at and the way I'm thinking about it is the proposal right here, which is the data center, which for the reasons mentioned is not ideal. I think what the good news is and the benefit is I think there are real mitigation that is reducing the negative impact of that. But I think actually a real positive impact is that, it was even mentioned, just the idea and the opportunity for this property to be remaining green space, this half. And if this is approved, then this is keeping really about half of this to be green space, period, so that there would be no opportunity for building, as you stated. The fact there'd be a plan here around it, the fact there would not be a fence around it, they'd be truly undisturbed. So as I look to it, I certainly don't see an office park as ideal. I don't see this as ideal, but I truly feel and understand from a zoning standpoint, whether I like it or not, it is office park, and if it's not this plan, it certainly could be something that is taking up more space and would take up more space for the profitability. So where I really lean is that with the right conditions to ensure that everything we've heard and to ensure that all the improvements made are followed through on, and to protect this extra green space, to leave it as really not an impervious surface, and instead have it be pervious.
Councilmember Palermo, can I ask a question, clarifying question?
Please.
Would you be open to an interpretation from City Council on the potential opportunity for what that green space could be used for or declared? Would you be open to an opportunity for that, for perhaps an opinion?
I'd be curious of Mr. David's guidance on that.
It'd kind of be up to the applicant if they'd be willing to take suggestions from the mayor and council on maybe using it for trails or something. It'd be up to the applicant right now. It's their property.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Sorry, Mr. Palermo, I just thought you might want a little clarification there, because you're suggesting that there might be another use there potentially for that land that's not going to be used, if I understand you correctly. Is that right, sir?
And the fact that I had heard the applicant specifically mentioning that they would not be if this is approved, they would not be developing anything on that. They would not be fencing it in any way for all the undisturbed areas. So I'm just, as I'm kind of weighing, I want to share, I think there were legitimate comments made from the residents, and my thoughts are, I am weighing it that if I did live right here backing up, I'd much rather have half the space remaining green space, and these air quality controls and sound controls also put in place. But curious to see, I know there was a whisper there.
Councilmember Hall, would you like to comment on the matter?
Thank you, Mayor, but my comments are a little bit different. Did we want a response on this topic?
I don't know if the applicant is prepared to respond to this question.
I'm not sure we were asked a specific question about that green space that is our property, that I think our intent is it would remain our property. But if, and that is a big if in bold, underlined several times, if there was ever a desire to do something other than leave that in green space, Verizon would have to come back to you, and I'm sure the folks who talked tonight would pull up not just the minutes of this meeting, but the video from this meeting, saying Verizon said they had no intention of using that. But I think we do want to retain that as our property. We are not fencing it because we know people already go back there, whether we invite them or not. But I think if you were to turn it into something that had trails, that sort of thing, then the question becomes, where do people park when they want to use those trails? Do they park in the neighborhood? Do they cut through people's yards? Do they try to park on the Verizon property? I think leaving it as what we would call passive green space under the ownership of Verizon makes a lot of sense to us for security reasons, and I think it makes a lot of sense to the community, particularly the adjacent neighbors who've become accustomed to that as their woods. We are maintaining that 40-foot buffer adjacent to the developed portion of the property. Again, that's retaining it in natural condition, supplementing it potentially once we discuss it with the arborist. And then you have the right-of-way of Turner Road, Turner Trail, whatever it's now called, that varies, and Ms. Dybel may be able to tell you exactly how wide that is, but I think the right-of-way varies from 20 to 30 or more feet along that stretch. So there's a considerable buffer that will remain in place between our property, our developed portion of the property, and the adjacent neighbors. And for many of them, there will be no change whatsoever. Once you get south of the line, driveway line, it'll be just as it is now.
Thank you for that. Now my three questions. And actually, I'll start with my third question since you ended on that. And Ms. Dybel, maybe you can help to clarify this. So we have Turner Road, which is a city easement, is that correct? And approximately the width of that is 40 feet, and then there's another 40-foot buffer, so we've got 80 feet.
So it's a city right-of-way.
Okay, it's city right-of-way.
And that's been there for a long time. It is approximately, hold on a second, let me look at the plans here. I believe the road is approximately between 30 and 40 feet, or the right-of-way, not road, right-of-way.
So the 30 to 40 feet, on the homeowner side, does that go right up to their property? Is that measured right?
It would go up to their rear property lines.
To their rear property lines. And then there's another 40-foot buffer.
Which is on the Verizon property.
The Verizon side. And any additional buffer where those trees, the tree line's going to be planted? Or is the tree line, the screening trees are going to be inside your 40-foot buffer?
So any screening trees that are added, the evergreens that we discussed, would be inside of that 40-foot buffer.
Inside the 40-foot, okay. Thank you. Then my other two comments and questions I'd like you to speak to. When I was out there in, I guess, late November before the December meeting, the neighbor that I spoke with lives directly behind the Alpharetta property, and I know we can't.
Ms. Nimmons.
Actually, it was a different neighbor.
They were okay. She was at the community meeting, I'm sorry.
And what he said in conversation was the noise that bothered them was the activity that went around in the parking lot behind the facility in the evening. And I'd like you to address, is there an end time to that activity? Is there a way to limit that activity to not happen after a certain hour? Do people come and go all night? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so the facility is a 24/7 facility. It is staffed at different times of the day. Being critical to our network infrastructure, we do have people that are working in that facility at different times. Additionally, most of our maintenance that could impact service to our customers is performed during the overnight hours. So people may be coming in the late evening to go inside the building and set up to perform that maintenance. Maintenance to the facility itself is typically done during the daytime. So anything with the generators, maintenance on the generators, maintenance on the HVAC units, things that are done outside the building are typically done during the daytime. Things that could impact service inside the building is usually what's done in the overnight hours. So it would impact our business significantly to limit the operation times that we could access the facility.
To access the back of the facility.
Correct.
But
And-
we could tell those folks to, you know, to be as quiet as possible as they're arriving and departing. We could notify our vendors,
That we
folks
can
who are
do.
coming in for maintenance, that keep in mind they're people that
Live here.
that live here or live adjacent to the facility. We'd be happy to do that.
Okay, and then on my recent visit out there, I'm speaking to another neighbor that is going to be behind this facility. His concern was security. And I don't know if we address security, that perhaps people might want to come. I don't know if he meant that people might want to come and take equipment or think there's equipment to take, or security at a different level. Can you?
I can't go into the specifics of it because I don't know, but I know it is a very secure facility. I don't know exactly what, just as you, I don't know exactly what his question was specifically about security. There will be the fencing around the perimeter of our property line on the portion that's improved, but I can't speak.
Yeah, so our corporate security team does have a standard that all of our facilities must follow. That's going to include many of your typical security features, including access control, closed-circuit televisions, or closed-circuit camera systems, on-site personnel, access management through smart cards, and things like that, lighting. There's other features that will help to secure the facility against unauthorized access or use.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Councilmember Vanstrom.
Just to follow up on Ms. Hall, is there, on the Alpharetta building, there's parking that's along the old Alabama connector?
There is.
Parking available, but it's outside the gates.
Right. That's
So all this night activity, can we encourage them to park on that side? Or do they have to go through the gates to get to something for some reason on the back side? Because if you look at, I mean, that's the only thing that'll interrupt the residents.
It's going to be a combination. Some very well could park on the outside. Some are bringing tools and equipment out of their vehicles and using the loading docks and that type of facilities that is currently located on the back of the property.
So some could be mitigated.
Could be.
And
Yes,
then
sir.
the other question I had was about the HVACs. Having been to the Alpharetta one, the HVAC noise is a constant hum. That has not been measured at all in decibels. Does anybody in the group, in your group, have an estimate?
No, it has. It has. It's included in the sound maps.
So how much is that without generators going?
That number is what I don't have. It would be somewhat less than the 55 dBA that's at the property line, or that we're showing right now at the property line with
Right.
one pod, or 56 dBA with two pods.
And
Boy, that'd be a nice number to know.
if you look at this particular graphic here, you see to the right-hand side toward the legend, there's an area that is sort of light green and then somewhat darker green. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jesse, but that is noise generally associated with the HVAC as opposed to the generators. So that's actually much less than, well, that's what's shown, is that's probably in the 50, once we hit the property line, 52, 53 decibels.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. I have two questions. So one of them regarding the HVAC sound. Now, you, in your presentation, you had provided the quality of generator, which you had mentioned, like San Diego, and this meeting the same standards. Are there specific sound standards or quality from an HVAC standpoint of how you select the?
Not that I'm aware of. Are you aware of any?
You need to come up, sorry.
Come up to answer.
So the units, yeah, okay. The units are pretty much the same all over the country, and they're in other areas where the same concern has been brought about in this type of forum. There really isn't a whole lot that you can do to the unit itself. Always the solution has been to build a sound wall, which is what we're doing.
Okay, so this rating and this picture and these plans include a sound wall around the HVAC
Yeah,
as well?
it's a.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yes.
It includes the screen wall with the acoustical louvers, because I've been working with Jesse on that, so.
Gotcha, thank you. And my other question is going back actually to deliveries. So again, I'm really focused on anything being discussed always being a legal condition, and I certainly understand just saying that they'll be told to keep it down is not gonna fly.
Right.
So I guess just help me better understand, why do deliveries have to occur at nighttime?
Not deliveries.
Okay.
But work on the inside of the building, on the servers, on the network. It's to minimize the risk of impact to our customer.
Okay. Okay, but so
Deliveries are still occurring during the daytime.
okay.
Any large pieces of equipment that need to come in, they're going to come in, get staged in a staging area, and then the technicians that are actually going to do the work with that delivery would come in the evenings and work overnight inside the facility.
Okay, but to be clear, no outside deliveries will be occurring at nighttime.
That is not our typical operating procedure, no.
Okay.
Mr. Palermo, you done, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Council, any other comments, thoughts, or questions? Applicant, thank you for your time. Roswell residents, thank you for your time and input. At this time, Mr. Palermo, Councilmember Palermo, do you have a motion?
I do, and I certainly request of this mayor and council and city attorney, city administrator, and everybody watching to, I covered, I feel, a lot of concerns, a lot of things that mitigate, a lot of the concerns. And again, I see benefits of this over an office park that could go in without these types of requests that would create a lot more clear cutting, a lot fewer trees, a lot more impervious surface, and all that. So I'm gonna make a motion, and it's gonna be contingent on a lot of legal conditions. So I will want your confirmation. It's all based on things that you've said, so nothing's related to anything that you haven't already said. And again, I ask this mayor and council for anything that's been discussed that's not included to please call out, because I want to make sure it's thorough, to make sure the right protections are in place, to make sure that this is at least making it a better situation than a larger office park could be. So on that note, I motion to approve item number 14 with the following conditions. First of all, staff recommendations. And it's my understanding this go around, there were not any additional planning commission recommendations, correct? Okay, so first off, with staff recommendations, and then adding in, as you discussed, there would be, as the applicant mentioned, no chain link fences. So I'm seeing yes, that you agree with, because what I want you to also do, yeah, if you could go up there and please confirm everything, because the last thing I'd want to do is say something that you haven't discussed. So please confirm that you did say those things. All right, so when I saw you nodding your head, that
Yes.
you agree with the no
Yes.
chain link fences. So here's one that you brought up in your presentation. I didn't really discuss much, but I would like to add as a condition, since you added it, which is that the roof will be covered in as many solar panels as possible. That's something you stated.
Yes.
Any concerns with that legal condition?
No, sir.
Thank you. Since purely I wouldn't have even, known specific code or anything like that, but in your presentation, you mentioned that the generators will be identical to the San Diego location and meet the same standards.
Yes. Yes, sir.
And therefore, putting that in as a condition that, as you mentioned, those would be the minimum standards met by the generators.
Yes.
Agree with that?
Agreed.
And all the lights would have the down-facing LEDs, which would fully screen the light from any neighboring properties? Am I understanding that correctly, or how did you describe those down-facing LEDs?
So all of the perimeter lights around the parking lot are designed with the down-facing LEDs, and the ones bordering the buffer will have the deflectors and be on a time clock to turn off at 11.
Okay, so for starters, so all the perimeter ones would have the down-facing reflector LEDs? Is that
Yes.
correct? And would
These with additional cutoff deflectors.
additional cutoff deflectors, and those would be shut off at 11 PM, am I hearing that correctly? Okay, and then, so that's one condition. Help me understand, though, the rest of the non-perimeter lights. I'm really concerned with the risk of those bleeding into a neighbor's yard.
So we'll need to maintain some lighting around the building itself.
Couldn't that be done with down reflectors?
I'm not prepared to say that it could or couldn't be. Most of the time, they're a wall pack unit and not a typical street lamp.
Oh, I see, okay.
And so I'm concerned about making that condition.
Then without getting the specifics of how it's done? The big focus just that those lights will not shine into any neighboring properties. Any concerns with that?
Just for your comfort, Catherine has had someone do a photometric study that shows no spillover of light beyond the property, or beyond the, is it property line or beyond the curb line?
Yeah, after conferring with Catherine from Morrison Hirschfield, we can agree that the wall packs would not shine into the neighbor's properties.
Okay, so those would be two separate conditions. And Ms. Dybel, are you keeping track of these? And of course, please interrupt anytime I'm not being clear for you, and same thing with you, Mr. Davidson. And then also, so something I heard you say to Councilman Morthland's question, if I heard you correctly, that you would maintain and replace screening trees if necessary.
Yes.
Okay, so that's something, so that would be condition, thank you. Also, something that you talked about many times, but we did not discuss as a condition, just that the testing would not exceed 1 hour, 1 day per week.
The testing of the generators in Roswell would not exceed 1 hour and 15 minutes, 1 day per week.
Okay, Ms. Dybel, you got that right there. And then I guess this is probably just my question for Ms. Dybel or this mayor and council from a noise standpoint. So the generators that they had mentioned that affect having the same minimum standards as the ones they did in San Diego, that addresses the air quality. Hopefully it helps with the noise as well. But from a noise standpoint, is there anything that we should be adding to make sure just around that enclosure being top of the line? And I guess what would your suggestion be for what we've discussed to ensure just the sound enclosure is that full top quality that you've discussed and offered tonight?
So I think we could say that we are willing to use the generators that are rated for 65 dBA at 23 feet, as well as the additional sound attenuating louvers around the sound wall that is bordering that generator. So 2 steps of attenuation.
Okay. And Ms. Dybel, so if you get those 2 steps to the attenuation and just, of course, what's offered is always the minimum, that obviously you could always, as anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why don't we repeat that one more time
so
for Ms. Dybel?
we would agree to make it conditional on using the generators that are 65, meet the requirements to transmit no more sound than 65 dBA measured at 23 feet, as well as additional sound attenuation louvers on the wall surrounding the generators.
And,
Got that? We good there?
and that's what's around the HVAC as well, right?
Additionally, we will use sound attenuating louvers on the wall surrounding the HVAC on the Roswell property.
Thank you. And then my last one is, and Ms. Dybel, I actually need your advice on this one. I know we've done this in the past for some other the properties as well. Just assuring that there's no deliveries occurring at night. How would we state that?
If you like, you can do something like, there shall be no deliveries between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., something like that, if that's what you're looking for, or 9 p.m. or whatever number you're looking for, 8 p.m., and go to that.
What I'd prefer earlier, so what do you see as, you mentioned you have your standard practices, you don't do it at night anyways. Is it between 6 p.m. and 7 a.m. or 6 p.m. and 9 a.m.? What do you see as typically when there's not going to be deliveries?
Right here to ask that question too.
Do you have a standard language in your noise ordinance about construction hours or?
7 to 7?
7 to 7.
And so that's the 7 to 7 is the construction hours. Well, now what's our noise ordinance on when's considered daytime, when's considered nighttime? Okay, 11 p.m. to what time? To what time in the morning? 7. So I'd feel more comfortable with construction at 7 to 7. There'd be no deliveries. Is that any concerns with that?
My only concern would be in any emergency situations where we had to replace a piece of equipment inside of the building to maintain service to our customers. We would need a consideration for that. But for normal deliveries, I'm okay with the 7 to 7.
Okay, so the way I'm hearing it is there'd be no deliveries between 7 and 7 with the exception of exactly how you described it.
Service impacting equipment delivery.
And service delivery specifically on service delivery of the data, not any service, but specifically your, I just want to make, I'm trying to think of the right wording around that, but basically, yeah, Verizon's service delivery. Yeah, that makes sense.
Impacting
I'm agreeing with you.
Verizon service delivery, yes.
Yeah, that makes
works.
sense. I was just having to process it in my mind.
Okay.
So those are all the things that I heard and things that I think are important conditions to make sure this is much better than the previous item or previous proposal that you brought forward in December, as well as, frankly, I feel better than an office park leaving the green space. I am leaning, did I mention that there would be there'd be no fence around
No chain link fence.
Well, so I mentioned no chain link fence, but also that you would not be fencing, there'd be no fence around the undisturbed area.
No fence around the district.
It's not planned.
Not planned.
It's not in
I
the
mean,
site.
well,
plan.
here's the concern that if things happen there that shouldn't be happening there because people come in, I think we, for our own safety and security and that of the neighbors, we want to be able to secure it.
And so I guess my thought process, so there's no question the importance of the security. My thought process is the fence where you're worried about, the area you're worried about and what you're keeping secure is if I'm looking at the map, the right side of the property, in which case the left side of the property, I just prefer true undisturbed, which I believe in our code, Jack, Ms. Dybel, do we have undisturbed buffers don't allow fences, right? Okay, so I'm saying, correct, Lenore? Oh, they are allowed. Okay.
Fence installation is considered such a minor disturbance by just about every agency we work with that they don't count as disturbance in those areas. So it's not something that we would disallow for the kind of purposes that they were referring to.
Okay, so that probably changes things from my perspective, because again, I think an important aspect of this, knowing that the city is giving up a lot with this, is just the aspect of having, frankly, whether it's residents on Old Alabama or residents backing up, being able to see just pure undisturbed green space, and I do consider a fence disturbing that unless the neighbors were had a different view, but for me personally, I have concern with a fence around the undisturbed area.
Councilmember Palermo, I asked for a motion.
This is part of that.
I know, I've got 12 conditions so far. 12 conditions are concerning enough to me that is this something that needs to be put forward for consideration at a later time?
I mean, I'd say with these conditions, I'm comfortable with it, but obviously the fence one was an important one for me. But without the conditions, certainly changes things for me. That's where these are the conditions, basically wanting to make sure we have in the record everything that was stated tonight, because again, I have witnessed situations where an applicant said one thing and not followed through.
What I'd like to say, I guess, for the record is I would like mayor and council not to be in the process of negotiating at the dais. So either these conditions should be met and addressed before come to city council meeting, right? But I don't think it's your place as a council member or mine as a mayor to be having to go through conditions through this much detail at this kind of meeting. This meeting, these items should already be addressed formally from my perspective. And I don't think it puts you or the council or the city in a good position to be asking line by line in a public meeting what we need. So my recommendation would be, I don't want to be in this business, folks. These items need to be addressed, need to be gone through before they get to us. That's my perspective. 1 item, 2 item, 3 items, I could see that. 12 items, that's a long list. It's easy to make a mistake. So I don't know how y'all feel about it. You're the most experienced amongst us. But I'd like to see this process change for us. What are your thoughts on it, Councilmember Palermo?
So I guess first off is there are rules in the code regarding the timing, and this has already been deferred. So if we were to do a 2-week deferral, I guess the question would be for Ms. Dybel or Mr. Davidson, is that something, where are we in that time frame?
I think if the applicant agrees, you can extend it another 2 weeks, no matter what the time frame is. I'm not sure where we are in the time.
Councilmember Vanstrom.
We've already got all those conditions discussed. We're just down to the final fence. Why can't we just agree to run your fence along your driveway if you have a security need on that side?
Yeah, the fence along the driveway is what's currently submitted in the plan. The question was about, would we ever go back and add additional fencing? I think we've had the conversation that any changes from this site plan would have to come back before this group for approval.
And right now, it doesn't show a fence.
Yeah, well, actually, and the reason I was asking and the reason wanting is a legal condition is that would not be considered a substantial change. So if this council approved it without that condition, you could actually just put a fence in because that's just not considered substantial. So therefore, by adding this in, and then you end up determining a need, then you'd come back to council for it. That's the purpose of putting it in there.
That's fine.
Councilmember Hall, do you have a clarifying question?
Councilmember Palermo, do you have any more to add?
That was everything on my list.
Okay. My clarifying question is, I may have missed that the area is going to remain undisturbed. Was that part of the motion?
It was not, but it should have been since that was something that the applicant had said.
Okay, so the unbuilt area to the west, south will remain undisturbed.
Agree to that.
Councilmember Hills.
I didn't number these, so forgive me, but where you agreed to the sound attenuating louvers on the Roswell property, respectfully, I would ask that you do that for the Alpharetta property on the HVAC.
We will take that into consideration.
Council, a motion was made and yet discussion takes place. It does concern me that we do not have clarity on the motion. Councilmember Vanstrom.
If no further discussion,
Councilmember Vanstrom.
I'd like to second the motion.
What is the motion, Councilmember Palermo?
If possible, I'd like Ms. Dybel to read the conditions for the approval.
So the approval is with conditions, with the two staff conditions. No chain link fencing. The roof will be covered in solar panels, as many as they can indicate on the roof and place on the roof. The generators are to be identical to the San Diego, and the same standards are to be used. The lights shall be down-facing LED, fully screen the lights from the residential properties. All perimeter down-facing LED wall and cutoff reflectors at 11 p.m. The wall packs and other lights will not shine onto the residential properties. Maintain and replace the screening trees as necessary. The testing will not exceed 1 hour and 15 minutes per week on the Roswell property. Sound enclosure around the generators to be top quality. The sound continuing louvers along the generator shall meet 65 dBA measured at 23 feet. The sound continuing louvers shall also surround the wall and the HVAC as well. So the wall around the generators and around the HVAC. There shall be no deliveries between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. except for in an emergency impacting the Verizon service delivery. No fence shall be around the undisturbed tree area, and the unbuilt area to the south shall remain undisturbed.
Thank you, Jackie. The motion is made by Councilmember Palermo. Do I have a second?
Before we,
Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
thank you, Mayor. So I see the
So I
applicant. have
believe
feedback.
one of the clarifications on the lighting was that the perimeter, I think did I hear you right, that you said perimeter and wall packs would cut off at 11? Our intention is for only the perimeter to cut off at 11? Okay, I misheard you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and that's right. And Ms. Dybel, can you read the one that mentions the top quality? Because I think we do need to clarify that one.
Around the generators shall be the top quality, which is what you were discussing.
And instead, could we put the highest current standards, or how would you typically describe that?
I'm going to let
Well, I would, the current Verizon standard is 65 dB at 23 feet. So, I can't speak to is that state-of-the-art, top-of-the-line across. I just know that it's not done regularly by others. So it is a specific Verizon standard, so.
I think I had those two together. So you were talking about top quality, and then you said 65 dBA measured at 23 feet.
That's
So
the generators themselves.
That's the generators themselves.
It's the enclosure.
Like I said, the enclosure.
The enclosure of the generators.
Not the screen wall.
Any other clarifying questions, Councilmember Palermo? So a motion's been made by Councilmember Palermo with, I believe, yes, Councilmember Palermo.
And you did end up getting where we ended up on the fence around the undisturbed area? That was something you have, Ms. Dybel? Okay.
So a motion is made by Councilmember Palermo on item 14, I believe with 13 conditions. Is that correct? 14 conditions? 14 conditions, thank you. Is there a second?
I'd like to second that motion.
Councilmember Vanstrom seconds the motions. Seconds the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hands. It passes unanimously.
Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you. Councilmember Palermo, will you read the last community development item?
Item number 15, approval of the initiation of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code to Article 14, definitions, Section 14.2, defined terms. Ms. Dybel?
So this is the initiation of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code to Article 14 under defined terms. This is to add a definition for apartments and condominiums. So we'd be creating two definitions here. One is to an apartment unit, which is one or more rooms with private bath and kitchen facilities, comprising an independent self-contained dwelling unit offered for rent in a building containing more than 2 dwelling units. And the definition of a condominium would be a building or group of buildings in which units are owned individually and the structure, common areas, and facilities are owned by all the owners on a proportional, undivided basis. This is the proposed initiation, and staff recommends approval of the initiation of the text amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Dybel. Does council have any questions or comments? Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. So, Ms. Dybel, what I think is important, just wanting to make sure I understand, is there anything additional or anything clarifying that you feel would give it more teeth to make sure that staff has the authority to be able to rule on the difference between these definitions? Or do you feel this is providing the clarity to staff and the developers and giving staff the authority to address when say a condominium is looked to turn into an apartment complex?
So your question is if somebody has a condominium that's approved and then they decide, they say they want to try to do apartments. So we took a look at that earlier today and spoke with our business registration people and then found out that an apartment property owner would be required to get a business license, or actually is required to get a business license. They currently do now. So if that should come through, what we were thinking of doing is creating, what do you call it, not a hazard, but in our system, when something comes up for like the river corridor or the floodplain, it kind of flags. We will put a flag in there. So if somebody was going to do something like that, if there's a condition that comes through for a rezoning that gets approved, we'd be able to flag the system that we use. And if anybody should come in and say, okay, you know, these are approved for condos, but all of a sudden we've got a business license that's coming through and somebody wants to do an apartment and sell and change that, it would flag it in the system, which would automatically generate to staff, and we'd be like, stop. Right there, and that way we'd be able to, that would, in our minds, would be one of the best things we can do, and we have the capability to put flags in the system for floodplains and river corridor in the historic district. We can definitely talk with IT and create a flag for something like that as well. Welcome.
Thank you, Jackie. Council, any other questions, thoughts, comments? Is there anyone on the public that would like to speak on the matter for any Roswell residents? That being said, any further comments or questions from council? Councilmember Palermo, do you have a motion?
I do, and so before I make that motion, Ms. Dybel, my request to the Planning Commission will certainly be that they look, and if they have any additional ideas or any additional recommendations on how we should be setting this up, that they certainly provide that those comments. But that being said, I motion to approve the initiation of this text amendment to the Unified Development Code.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Do I have a second? Councilmember Vanstrom with a second. All those in favor, please raise your hands. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Now we move to the Transportation Department. Councilman Palermo, will you please read the transportation item?
Item number 16, approval of a text amendment to Chapter 21, adding a new Article 21.5, utility accommodations in the right-of-way to the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances. This is the second reading. Mr. Skalski?
Dan, before you read it, City Attorney needs to read the ordinance, please, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 21, adding a new Article 21.5, utility accommodations in the right-of-way to the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances, which includes adopting the Georgia Department of Transportation Utility Accommodation Utility Policy and Standards Manual for Transportation Projects. Now therefore be it ordained that the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell hereby amends the Code of Ordinances of Roswell, Chapter 21, adding a new Article 21.5, utility accommodations in the right-of-way, to read as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the second reading.
Thank you, City Attorney. Mr. Davidson. Dan, the floor is yours, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. As I mentioned when this was read the first time, this is adopting the state manual of practice for utility accommodations in the right-of-way. It will simply adopt statewide consistent practices that will simplify coordinating with our utility partners, establishes methods and timelines for creating work plans, utility agreements, and holding all of our parties, ourselves and our utility partners, responsible for adhering to those timelines. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dan. Does council have any questions or comments for Dan? That being said, with no comments or questions from council, are there any Roswell residents that would like to speak on this item? Being that there are no Roswell residents that would like to speak on this item, bring it back to council for further discussion. Any comments or thoughts or additional questions from council? That being said, that there are no comments, questions, Councilman Palermo, do you have a motion?
Motion to approve item number 16.
Do I have a second? Councilmember Hall seconds the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hands. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, sir. We'll now go to the city attorney's report. David Davidson, recommendation for closure to discuss personnel, litigation, and real estate. Do I have a motion?
Motion for closure.
Motion for closure by Councilman Morthland. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilman Hills. All those in favor for closure, please raise your hands. The motion passes unanimously. Being that there are no other items, do I have a motion to adjourn? Just what I got, right? Not going to come back. We're not coming back. Sorry about that. Have a good evening. Going to